سكانات ورداي بدون كل حلو مسس نابتي ويانا زحتو حغوز عززو سلام خبرات اخوات عالم من زلكم مجمعات تجارب خبراتنا قبون تجارب فتوت كلكم موزعت لما انتم مشيت تقريبا رولكم تدفو ناي امريكا دنسي تسمع لما انتي بناي امريكا منجستي حسابات زقربي بانجليزኛ خبرولكم سلازيو ምናልባት አካሊ ሀገራት ዘለኹም ተጋር አሕዋትና ትግርኛ እንግሊዝኛ ምናልባት ዝኸብረኩም ኮይኑ ኣብቲ መንጎ ንእሽተይ ሕፅርና በልኩ ብትግርኛ ግን መጨረሻ ብትግርኛ ክዓፅበኩም እየ ለማዓንቲ ግን ከይነ እየ ዝቐርበኩም ዘለኹ ስለዚዩ እቲ ዘቕርበልኩም ሓሳባት ንክትከታተሉና ብክብሪ ሳይበር ፓወር ትግራይ ሚድያ ንዕድመኩም ኣለና So before I go to discuss the topic today in English, let me say this. Addis Ababa ዘለኹም ተጋሩ ወይ ድማ ዓለም ሙሉእ ዘለኹም ተጋሩ ኣሕዋትኩም ዕሮትኩም ቤተሰብኩም ኣዝማድኩም ትፈልጥዎም ተጋሩ ኣብ ኣዲስ አበባ ዘሎ ብሰዓት እዚዩ ኣይትንቀሳቀሱ ወርዎም ስልክታት ምዝራብ ይግደፍዎ ፌስቡክ ማሰጃት ይግደፍዎ ትመልእክቲ እዚ ሓሊፉ እዩ ይርደና እዩ so ሒዚ ኣዲስ አበባ በቃ ቋንቋ ትግርኛ ዝዛረብ ተጠቆመ ይኹን ዘይተጠቆመ ዝረኸብካየ በሎ እዩ ዝበሃል ዘሎ ናይ ለማዓንቲ ኣዋጅ ወፅእ ዝኒሄና ኣብይ ኣሕመድ ኣብ ኣዲስ አበባ ዘሎ ናይ ትግራይ ዘርኢ ናይ ትግራይ ዓሌት ብዝረኸብካየ ሕረዶ ዳርጋ ቀተሎ እዩ ዝኒሄ ኣብ ከቢድ ፀገም እዩ ዘሎ ብፍርሒ ከም እያሱ ሓውና ዝደረፎ ቀደም ተጋዳላይ እያሱ ወይለይከ ሰብዓይ ዓቢዱ ዋታሞት ፎሊጥ ድዩ ክማላልአና ደልዩ ዝብል ደርፎ ኣሎ ደሊኹም ኣብ ዩቱብ ኣድርፍዎ ስምዕዎ እዚ ንመንግስቲ ሃይለ ማርያም ተደረፈ እዩ ሒዚ ድማ TDF ናብ ኣዲስ አበባ ስለ ዝቐርብ ዘሎ ዓቕሊ ፅበት ናይ ኣብይ ኣሕመድ ግፍዒ ኣብ ህዝብና ከም ድልየትኩም ስርሑ ኢሉ ኣዋጅ ኣውፂዎ ዘሎ እዚ ክንጥንቀቀሉ ኣለና ህዝብና ተናዲዱ ፌስቡክ እናወፃኻ ማሰንጀራት ትዊተር እናወፁ ኣብ ኣዲስ አበባ ኮይኖም ዝቃለሱ ዘሎ ኣሕዋትና ጠጠው ኣብልዎ ኣየድልየና ናሃትኩም ሂወት ናሃትኩም ጉልበት ትግራይ ፅባሕ ንጎ ክተድልያ እያ ማንም ትግራዋይቲ ማንም ትግራዋይ ሰዓት እዚዩ ክጉድአና ሕማቅ ነገር ክወፅሖ ኣይንደልን ስለዚዩ ህፁፅ መልእክቲ ናብ ኩሉ በምሓራ ክልል ዘለው ኣዲስ አበባ ዘለው ኣሕዋትና ተጋሩ ኣብዚ ሰዓት እዚዩ ኣብ መሪር ኣብ ሕማቅ ግዜ ስለ ዝርከቡ ዘለው ጥንቃቄ ጌርና ሓሳብ ነመሓላልፍ ንሕና ንባዕልና እውን እቲ ፕሮፓጋንዳታት ንፅሕፎ ዘለና ንቐንሰሉ ንሕዋትና ዝጎድእ እንድሕር ኮይኑ ኣነ ንባዕለይ እውን ያው ጥንቅቕ ኢለ ክዛረብ ስለዚዩ ይቅርታ ብእንግሊዝኛ ብትግርኛ ሚክስ ክገብሮ እየ ምክንያቱ ኣድላይ ስለ ዝኾነ እዩ መብዛሕትኡ ግዜ ከም ትፈልጥኒ ኣጋይሽ ሒዘ ሓደ ወይ ክልተ ጋይሽ ሒዘ እየ ዝኣቱ ናይ ሎማዓንቲ ግን ፅባሕ ናብ ዋሽንግተን ዲሲ ይኸደ ኣለኹ እየ ሰላማዊ ሰልፊ ድምፂ ናይ ህዝብና ክነስምዕ ናይ ኣሜሪካ መንግስቲ ድማ ሒዚ ኣምሓሩ ቡቲን ፕሮፓጋንዳ እናውምፁ ውሽጢ ናይ ትግራይ መንግስቲ ናይ ትግራይ TPLF ትሕግዙ ኣለኹም እቲ ጀኖሳይድ ናይ ትግራይ ጠጠው ይበል ኢሉ ኣክሽን ከይወስድ ናይ ሰብ ድምፂ ዝብሎ ዘቀላቀሉ ሕሶት ፕሮፓጋንዳ ናቶም ድምፂ ሰሚዑ ናይ ኣሜሪካ መንግስቲ ንእሽተይ ኣብቲ ዘጭወርብዎ ዘለው ኢንፎርሜሽን ኤክስፐርት ተባሂሎም ናይ ኣፍሪካ ኤክስፐርት ተባሃለ ኣምባሳደር ጀፍሪ ፌልመን ዝበሃል ናቱ እቲ ዲስከሽን ለማዓንቲ ንእሽተይ ከስምዐኩም ንሓዋወስኩም እንግሊዝኛ ኢትዮ 360 ድማ ተዛረብዎ ዘረባታት ኣሎ ንሕና ፅባሕ ንግሆ እንደገና ብቅልፅምና ዘምፃናዮ ሰላም ንህዝብና ንሃገርና እቲ ዓንቀፅ 39 ከይንጥቀመሉ መብቱ ህዝቢ ትግራይ ህዝቢ ኦሮሞ ካልእ ብሄርና ኢትዮጵያ መብቱ ዓንቀፅ 39 ብሕጊ መብቱ ይከበረለይ ምስ ኢትዮጵያ ኣይደልን ኢሉ እንድሕር ወሲኑ ከይውስን ንሱ እውን ኣብ ቀረባ ሓፂር ግዜ ክድምሰስ ከም ዘለዎ ክስረዝ ከም ዘለዎ እናበልኦም ዝፍክሩ ዘለው ትሕግስ ተተሰሪዙ ሒዚ ዓንቀፅ 39 እንድሕር ተሰሪዙ ፅባሕ ንግሆ ሓይሊ ናይ TDF ስለ ዝረአ ዘሎ TDF ምስ ኦሮሞ ሓይሊ ብሓደ ኮይና ሒዚ ኣዲስ አበባ ኣብ ቀረባ ግዜ ክትቋፀር እያ ኢሎም ስለተረድኦም እዮም ዝኽሉ ዝገብርዎ ዘለዉ ሶ እዚ እናበልና ደጋጊመ ዝብለኩም ዓለም ምሉእ ዘለኹም ክቡራት ኣሕዋት ተጋሩ ከምኡ እውን ንተጋሩ ተኽብሩ ንተጋሩ ትፈትዉ ብሂማን ራይት ፋይት ትገብሩ ዓለም ምሉእ ዘለኹም እዚ ድምፅና ነስምዕ ሒዝም እንተኾነ ኣብዚ 4 መዓልቲ ዝመፅእ ዘሎ ካብ ሓሙስ ጀሚርና እስካብ ሰንበት ኣብ ዋሽንግተን ዲሲ ንእከበሉ ዘለና ናይ ኣሜሪካ መንግስቲ ንፕረዚደንት ጆ ባይደን ንክነስምዕ ድምፅና እዩ ተጋሩ ኣስሚዕና ኢና ከዓ ግን ክንቅፅለሉ ኣለና ኣድላይ እዩ ሶ ፕሊዝ ተዘናደና ነገራት ንሕሰበሉ ብሰዓት እዚ ኣብ በቃ ዓወትና ቀሪባ እያ ኣሕዋትና ከምቲ ዝበልዎ ቶም ጀጋኑ ጀነራላትና ሓመድ ልሒሶም ተሲኦም ኣበይ በፂሖም ከም ዘለዉ ኣነ እዚ ንኣኻትኩም ከርድእ ኣይክእልን እየ ምክንያቱ ኩልና ሓቢርና ኢና ንሪኦ ዘለና ኩልና ሓቢርና ኢና ንሰርሐሉ ዘለና ንምንታይ ግፍዕ ተሰሪሑ ብህዝብናን ብሃገርናን ትግራይ እዚ ግን ንሕና ቃልሲ ዘድልየና እንታይ እዩ ሕዚ ብትዊተር እናተፃረፍና ብፌስቡክ እናተፃረፍና ዘይኮነስ እቲ ኣብ ኣዲስ ኣበባ ዝኒሄ ህዝብና ካብ 300 እስካብ 500 ሽሕ ዝኸውን ትግራዋይ ኣብ ኣዲስ ኣበባ ከም ዘሎ እዩ ዝበሃል ሓበሬታ ዘሎ እዚ ዝኣክል ህዝቢና እንድሕር ኣብ ኣዲስ ኣበባ ልዩ እዚ ህዝቢ እዚና ግን ከይጉዳእ ንብረቱ ተወሪሱ ገንዘቡ ባንክ እናተዓፀወ ዘይተሰርሐ ግፍዒ ብትግራዋይ ብተጋሩ የለን ብኣብይ ኣሕመድ ዝመፀ እቶም ኣምሓሮ ሓደ ሓደ ክልል ሒዝ ትሪእዎም ዘለኹም ንስኻትኩም ደኣ ተባሃለና ካሊእ ትገብሩልና ዘለኹም ካሊእ ከምዚ የመሰለና እናበሉ ይዛረቡ ኣለዉ ፅቡቕ ሰላም ተቐበለካ ሰላም ዝኾነ ሰብ ድሓን ንሕና እንታይ ኣውታት ኣይንደራደር ስለዚዩ እዚ ናይ ኣምባሳደር ጀፍሪ ፌልመን ዝበሎ ከስምዐኩም እየ ካብኦም መንጎ እናኣተኹ ብእንግሊዝኛ ኣድገብረሉ እየ ናይ ባዕላይ ሓሳብ ካብኡ ንሃትኩም እውን ኣብቲ ቻት እናርኢኹ መልሲ ክህብ ክምኩር እየ ስለዚ ብሓደ ክንዝናነ ሳይበር ፓወር ትግራይ ሚድያ ድማ ንኽዓብየልና ብኣኻትኩም እዩ ሸር ግበርዎ ሰብስክራይብ ገበሩልና እዚ እናበልኩ እቲ ድምፂ ናይ ኣሜሪካ ስፔሻል ኣፖይንትድ ዝገበረ ባይ ጆ ባይደን ድምፁ ናቱ ከስምዐኩም ይቅርታ ንእስተይ ናይ ቴክኒካል ፀገም ኣላና እዚኣ ከስተኻኽል እየ እና ኣኒወይ እቲ ተገብረ ድምፂ ናይ ሎማዓንቲ እቲ ዝኒሄ ኩነታት ብጣዕሚ ኣገዳሲና ከቢድ ነገራት ስለ ዘሎ ብናይቲ ኣብይ ኣሕመድ መንግስቲ እዚ ነገር ካሊእ ትረፍ ናይ ስቴት ዲፓርትመንት ናይ ኣሜሪካ
On behalf of the United States Institute of Peace, we're delighted to welcome you to this important discussion with Ambassador Jeffrey Feltman. My name is Lise Grande, and I am the president of USIP, which is established by Congress in 1984 as an independent, nonpartisan national institution dedicated to preventing, mitigating, and helping resolve violent conflict abroad. This conversation comes at an important time. All of us here are deeply worried by the spreading violence in Ethiopia and the military coup in Sudan. The world watched with great hope when Prime Minister Abiy initiated reforms 3 years ago, setting the foundation for transition. The unprecedented voter turnout in the June and September elections and the initiatives by civic leaders to promote national dialogue and bring together youth, women, and religious leaders to bridge divides show a continuing commitment to finding political solutions. Finding these political solutions are unfortunately becoming ever more difficult as the country faces a terrible humanitarian emergency, growing violence, and a proliferation of hate speech. When Ambassador Feltman was appointed U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa in April 2021, he was tasked with leading a U.S. diplomatic effort to address the interlinked political, security, and humanitarian crises in the Horn of Africa. We invite everyone to follow today's conversation on Twitter with hashtag @USPolicyEthiopia. We're now very pleased to introduce Ambassador Feltman, who was appointed the U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa in April this year. Ambassador Feltman brings a very distinguished record to this position. He served as Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs from 2009 to 2012, was the U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon from 24 to 28, and has served in Erbil, Baghdad, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Tunis, Amman, Budapest, and Port-au-Prince.
But you guys heard her, what she said. She's talking about his credentials, who this person is, right? An American distinguished ambassador with zero experience in Africa, zero. So his credential, his resume is solely focused on other nations that are nowhere to be in East Africa or the continent of Africa. So I just wanted to make sure when I interject my conversation, my thought process, my opinion into this, I listened to this. It's an hour and 3 minute long. And there is a statement released by the U.S. State Department, by the way, just so you all know, that the U.S. State Department has announced level 4 danger in Ethiopia, meaning all U.S. citizens wanting to travel to Ethiopia are asked to not travel to Ethiopia. And they are advised, those in Ethiopia, to not travel outside Addis Ababa. And they are advised further to leave Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, as soon as possible. This is the U.S. State Department announced just today. So for those of you who are following what's happening after the capture of Kombolcha, of course, Desse, Kombolcha, TDF is actually further south, and there's nothing that is going to stop TDF from going after those who committed genocide on the people of Tigray. America must understand, and let me be clear. I am proud to be Tigrayan American. I love the United States of America, but I am also disgracefully ashamed by the fact that the lack of action by the United States of America, by the country I feel like proudly to be part of, which is actually why also you see me for the first time. I'm more in USA instead of TDF, because I'm making statement to my government, America. And it starts tonight when I go to Washington, D.C. tomorrow with all my fellow Tigrayan Americans in Washington, D.C. We're going to march peacefully. We're going to bring not just awareness, but we're going to demand to our government, the United States of America, to bring action to no-fly zone in Tigray, so that the Abiy regime and his father in Eritrea is not using base in Eritrea to bomb Mekelle and other cities in Tigray. This fight in Tigray has never been between TPLF and the government of Ethiopia. First of all, there was no government in Ethiopia. Abiy Ahmed was a transitional government appointed when Desalegn Hailemariam resigned from office. So what I'm going to do today in this platform on Cyber Power of Tigray is point out to you the facts on the ground. I'm not taking TPLF's side. I'm not doing this and that. As Tigrayan American, my goal is to point out the fact, including criticizing my government here in the United States of America. What has my government done when it came to rape of Tagaru women in Tigray? Nothing. Nothing. So when I hear this level of respect for a man who has no experience in East Africa, and he advises the president of the United States, and it shows you what is wrong with America. It shows you that they don't understand, and they don't want to understand the politics, the geopolitics of Africa. And you're going to hear him talking how wonderful it felt for him when he met Prime Minister Meles Zenawi. And they don't understand. Meles Zenawi built Ethiopia from scratch. And he happens to be from the very people, from my people, from the Tigray people, who are now being ethnically Tigrayan to be eliminated from Ethiopia. Over 7 million people. And now we have anywhere between 300,000 to 500,000 civilians in Addis Ababa based on their ethnicity, Abiy Ahmed administration, Eritrean security forces in Addis Ababa are after them. So I'm going to let you listen to this and I'll jump in again.
Ambassador Feltman is the recipient of 2 Presidential Service Awards and a number of State Department Superior Honor Awards. From July 2012 until his retirement in April of 2018, Ambassador Feltman served as Undersecretary General and head of the UN's Department of Political Affairs. He was the chief foreign policy advisor to the UN Secretary General and oversaw all UN mediation and conflict prevention work across the globe. He has recently worked at the Brookings Institution and at the UN Foundation, both based in Washington, D.C. I hope everyone joins me in a very warm welcome to Ambassador Feltman.
Good morning. Hello to everyone. And President Grande, dear friend Lise, thank you very much for that warm introduction. I am really delighted to be here at the U.S. Institute of Peace to talk about these issues because the U.S. Institute of Peace has shown such leadership with the programs they have in Ethiopia promoting dialogue between Ethiopians. I was honored to be a member of the Red Sea Study Group that USIP organized under Susan Sigant's leadership. And of course, Lise, it's wonderful to see you in this position as president. You and I were UN colleagues together, and I saw the heroic efforts you did in getting life-saving support to people in Yemen under war, and the life-saving support in Iraq for communities devastated by ISIS. So thank you very much. I would have guessed that Somalia, still troubled today, would top the list. I would never have guessed that Ethiopia, an exporter of stability via peacekeeping during my UN career, a long-standing important partner of the United States, to be consuming the bulk of my time and my worries and my conversations with Secretary Blinken in the White House. You know, as a boy growing up in a small town in the Midwestern United States, I knew of Ethiopia's biblical references, as the origin of coffee. It had been a World War II close ally of the United States, and as a courageous example of African independence against colonialism. I didn't have the advantage growing up in a small town Midwest to know members of that talented Ethiopian diaspora that have contributed so much to our country. Then as a young adult, I began to learn more about Ethiopia. I was so moved in 1985 by the reports of the Ethiopian famine that I made modest contributions. And subsequently, as I immersed myself professionally in foreign policy, I learned much more of Ethiopian politics and history. And I love the story of Negus Dawit I. His 15th century would, nearly a decade later, be fodder for misinformation on social media that the newly appointed U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa was somehow hopelessly partisan in favor of a man I never actually met. And this distortion reflects the strong views that exist on Melis's legacy on today's Ethiopia. And it's also a reminder that Ethiopia's social media is, if nothing else, wondrously creative. And what I recall about that first trip to Addis was the whispering. Whispering in the Sheraton. Whispering on the margins of the funeral events. Whispering even in the gardens outside. Conscious efforts to place cell phones at considerable distances from the conversations taking place. Fingers pointing to the ears and pointing to the ceiling as a reminder that walls in Addis have ears. What people were whispering would happen to Ethiopia now. Ethiopians had endured some very dark days in their modern history. And whatever one thought of his domination of Ethiopian politics, in the wake of Meles Zenawi's death, the Ethiopians I met in September 2012 were contemplating their uncertain future with foreboding. In hindsight, we now recognize that the transition created a welcome opportunity that the Ethiopians eagerly seized for gradual opening of the political space in which they could raise their voices more freely to express their aspirations for their country.
Until, that is, Abiy Ahmed came to power. He is correct, except when Abiy Ahmed came to power, let alone your voice to be heard, if you are from an ethnic group called Tigray, regardless, you're a child, a woman, a man, old, whatever age, and spoke Tigrinya in Addis Ababa, you are rounded up and who knows where you are taken.
Agreement tabled by the Trump administration and the World Bank regarding the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is a symbol of national pride for all Ethiopians.
And that was also initially put together by then Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, and Abiy Ahmed tried to get credit for that.
We've tried to be candid in sharing our best advice, namely that this military conflict, if it continues, will have disastrous consequences for Ethiopia's unity, territorial integrity, and stability, and also for Ethiopia's relations with the United States and the international community.
Except he doesn't understand there is no more Ethiopia. There's a place called former state of Ethiopia. Sadly, Ethiopia has fallen apart, and it is on the hands of Abiy Ahmed because he allowed the Arabs to tangle with our internal political differences, because he decided to bring Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea, and Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea successfully did what he always dreamt before he died. He wanted to divide Ethiopia. He wanted to kill as many civilians as possible in Tigray and destroy Tigray. Isaias Afwerki's army, you call them Shabia, Hegdef, whatever you'd like, they did not go to Tigray and fight a fight on the battlefield. With their 30 plus years of experience, actually 60 years if you count the fight that they were involved in during the Derg era, and their 30 years of independence, what have they done? What has, Isaias Afwerki done for Eritrea? Nothing. His failure to lead Eritrea is a result of Eritreans in massive have been migrated to Europe and America and other nations, of course. Sadly, many young Eritreans today are scattered throughout Ethiopia, throughout the Middle East, Europe, and many of the North African countries. The point is, the U.S. still is more concerned about Ethiopia versus the humanitarian crisis in Tigray, the genocide in Tigray. And now, some within the Amhara elite are pouring in millions of dollars for propaganda, hiring the most expensive lobbyists in the United States of America, approaching the U.S. Congress, the United States government to change the course on the ground, because TDF now is non-stoppable. TDF is roughly about 150 miles away from Addis Ababa. That's right. Within 150-mile radius to Addis Ababa. So we're talking within days, Addis Ababa could fall to the hands of TDF and the Oromo Army, Oromo Liberation Army. And as you all saw a few days ago, the Oromo Liberation Army and the Tigrayan Defense Forces have met in person and are now officially going to work side by side to wrap this up. In the meantime, Abiy Ahmed is ordering everybody in Addis Ababa to arm up. And if they don't know how to use a gun, and if they own one, to hand it over to those who know how. And he's ordered to attack any civilians, Tigrayan ethnics in Addis Ababa, which is a worrisome, which is also the U.S. government has ordered their citizens to not travel to Ethiopia, but also to leave Ethiopia as soon as possible.
We've repeatedly offered to help Ethiopia's leaders pursue a different path. And as we've engaged, we've been transparent in sharing our analysis of the situation in northern Ethiopia. We believe that the parties to the conflict have committed rampant human rights abuses and atrocities. There have been credible, documented, persistent reports by a wide range of sources about these abuses and atrocities. Looting, displacement, executions, reports of rape and sexual violence as a tool of war, with the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, the Eritrean Defense Forces, the Amhara Special Forces, and the TPLF, all implicated to some degree. We continue to carefully monitor and assess the human rights situation, and will carefully consider in our own review the upcoming joint report by the United Nations and Ethiopian human rights officials. The conflict, of course, has not been static, and we've adapted our message accordingly. There's been a major shift since late June, when the TPLF forces seized control of Mekelle, the regional capital of Tigray. And alarmingly, since July, the TPLF has widened the conflict and misery into the neighboring states of Afar and Amhara, displacing hundreds of thousands.
No, what they've done actually is they've gone after those who were continuously raping girls and women in Tigray and committing acts of violence and genocide in Tigray. So the people of Tigray had no choice but to fight back while they were under attack. You see, TDF, or the people of Tigray, did not cross over into the Afar region, into the Amhara region, into Eritrea, into any part outside Tigray until they became victims of genocide. So for those of you who are saying that I'm taking side, you can hide behind a keyboard, but you cannot hide from the truth. The truth is the war on Tigray was a war on civilian, and it was genocide based on ethnic. The failure for Abiy Ahmed and for the Amhara elite to understand Tigrayans are loving people, respecting people, did not deserve what they've gotten. You will be mistaken to continuously approach somehow Tigrayans are the enemy of Ethiopia, or Tigrayans have a desire to destroy Ethiopia. That is your own function. That is your delusional mindset of thinking somehow that Tigrayans built Ethiopia. Ethiopia is like a little baby that cannot function on its own without Tigray. Abiy Ahmed said it himself, that Ethiopia without Tigray is a vehicle without engine. Simple as that. That's not my word. That's the very person that you are worshiping, who's got thick blood on his hand in Tigray.
Suffering of receiving life-saving assistance. Now, I'm familiar with the arguments that food, fuel, and trucks can be diverted to TPLF war efforts. But my experience proves that such concerns can be satisfactorily addressed. For example, after initial delays and problems, the Israelis, who have genuine security concerns with the Gaza Strip, and the Saudis, who have legitimate security concerns about attacks on their territory originating in Yemen, have signed off on creative procedures for screening cargo headed to Gaza and certain areas of Yemen that address security concerns, but also permit food, fuel, and medicine to reach needy populations.
Listen to that. Just listen to what he said, please. So Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea, Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia, and the elite in both countries want us to believe that sending food and medicine to Tigray is going to go to TDF. And he just confirmed to you and to the world that is not the case. Even the Israeli government, when they were fighting, they were willing and they were able to allow humanitarian aids to flow to civilians. So for those, again, very few of you who want to hide, who want to deny the truth on the ground, is that if you believe that the people of Tigray deserve what they're getting, then you have no heart. Okay? You have no heart, because any human being, Tigrayans who are victim of this atrocity, the genocide in Tigray, the TDF forces who are fighting and chasing those who commit genocide in Tigray, when they capture them, they're not slaughtering them like you do. They're not. And you know what? City after city, town after town, village after village, the Amhara communities are recognizing, make no mistake about it, they are recognizing TDF is not out there to cut off women's breasts, to steal, to loot, to kill. They are attesting to the fact the world actually, have learned a lesson that you can buy weapons, but you cannot buy heart. That the TDF started with nothing, and look how far they've gotten now, because they have a genuine goal, that is to eliminate for those who committed genocide in Tigray once and for all. In the meantime, they are protecting civilians in the Afar region, in the Amhara region, and this will continue. That course will not change. Civilians anywhere in Ethiopia will not be harmed by TDF. TDF has taken extensive measure to ensure that when there is heavy fighting, TDF would actually avoid heavy fighting in urban areas to minimize casualty and use a different tactic to defeat the enemy. So if you understood why it actually took longer than it needed to be in Desse, it was precisely the government of Tigray, TDF, decided that they want to do a very minimum civilian casualty. When TDF was to be attacked in Tigray in early November, December of last year, we saw what they did. They left the cities because the dictator in Addis Ababa announced that nearly 500,000 people or more in Mekelle and other cities, if they did not get shelter, somehow he had built caves for them to be safe from bombs, that he was going to bomb it. He was going to destroy it, meaning that he was going to kill everybody. So TDF decided that was not the tactic they want to approach. They left the cities. And we saw what happened when Eritrean troops enter to the cities and villages of Tigray. They looted, they killed, they destroy everything. These are facts. So America, we've been saying this from day one. You said it. There are facts on the ground. CNN, to mention just one media outlet from the West, but many other media outlets, MSNBC, Bloomberg, well-known international media like Reuters, the Associated Press, New York Times, BBC, have all reported, France 24, the genocide on Tigray from day one. And genocide in Tigray is still taking place today as we speak, by the way, in Hamara. Let us not forget that. So again, I'm trying to articulate, I'm trying to clarify for those who have ears to hear, for those who are spreading false propaganda machine out there, that TDF is not after Amhara, TDF is not after civilians. TDF is after those Amhara Fana, Amhara militia, and the Biltzigana party elites who took an oath to uphold the constitution in Ethiopia, to defend the territorial integrity of Ethiopia and the people of Ethiopia. They failed to do that. And in fact, they turned their back on our people in Tigray and committed heinous crime. It's called genocide.
In Gaza and Yemen. Risk of losing important benefits under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA. if human rights violations are not addressed. This is due to the stringent human rights criteria for AGOA eligibility required by Congress under U.S. law. The United States is prepared to pursue the first sanctions under the executive order President Biden signed in September against those fueling this crisis and obstructing humanitarian operations. And we will be targeting all parties implicated.
Except it's too late. That doesn't do anything to save lives in Tigray, which is why TDF have decided this matter, if they don't take aggressive action to get rid of those evil troops from Ethiopia and from Eritrea, the people of Tigray can't just keep waiting and hope and to hear beautifully crafted notes to be read by Ambassador Feltman. With all due respect, you fail to understand the humanitarian crisis in Tigray. The genocide in Tigray cannot continue. U.S. has every ability and power to impose no-fly zone in Tigray, to drop food and medicine in Tigray. It is not that difficult. And I know for a fact, I was old enough to remember in 1997, Yugoslavia. It was the United States government-led coalition with NATO that took action against Milosevic because white Europeans were to be wiped out by a dictator like Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki. And the US say, the UN failed to act, so we're not going to watch it. But when it came to Rwanda in 1995, the US and the world watched it because another African country, we lost over 800,000 civilians. The Tigray genocide is totally different. And the US and other countries will not call it genocide because they know the minute they call it genocide, they will be responsible in rebuilding that nation, that region. So that is why they keep telling us they're concerned. We ask all parties to restraint. We ask all parties to come to the table for negotiation. Except Abiy Ahmed just told you that TDF is sacked from the federal system, labeled them a terrorist organization, and he said he doesn't want to negotiate. But oh, wait a minute. Now he knows it's a matter of days. Now he wants to negotiate. You know what? I actually wanted to see him to negotiate. I would like him to negotiate. And I'm going to wait for you guys' comment what you think, whether or not we should have negotiation with Abiy Ahmed. And I will tell you my answer why I think we should have negotiation with Abiy Ahmed and with Isaias Afwerki. And I know I love you, my Tagaro. I know you wouldn't agree with me, but I will tell you what my answer is going to be later on. But you tell me what you think, why we should have a negotiation with Abiy Ahmed and with Isaias Afwerki right now.
Well, Ethiopian officials have attempted to separate the conduct of the war from the Ethiopian-U.S. bilateral relationship. There is a direct causal relationship between what is happening on the ground as a result of the policies of the Ethiopian government and the actions of the other belligerents, and the subsequent decisions that have been taken or are being contemplated by the U.S. administration.
They should not be contemplating. When lives are lost, when genocide is committed, when people are dying because they don't have food and water and medicine, there's nothing to be contemplating about. What we need is real action. Action that saves lives in Tigray, that holds those who commit genocide accountable for their actions. Being concerned versus taking action is a different story. I will admit the U.S. did take a huge step, which is they forced the United Arab Emirates drones from Addis, Eritrea, to leave Eritrea. As a result of that, the drones that were attacking civilians in Tigray early on were no longer able to do so. TDF, on the other hand, regroup itself, rearm itself, not from black outsiders, not from white outsiders, which is what Abiy Ahmed said, but from within, by taking arms from those killers, from Isaias Afwerki's worshippers and Abiy Ahmed's worshippers. So America knows they have satellite facts, and they know what went wrong in Tigray. And they know that the war in Tigray was not a war between military. That was Eritrean forces, Ethiopian forces, Somalian forces, along with drones from the United Arab Emirates to wipe out the region. And General Zarkan said it yesterday. The deal that Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki was making with an Arab country, they know the strategy that was behind it. The Mediterranean Sea is a key outlet for some of the Arab countries, if not for most of them. And Eritrea by itself is too small of a country and too weak to be powerful enough to defend its security and national integrity. So they figure the way you can make it powerful and you can serve to the Arab is you research what's happening in Ethiopia. You find out the strongest people that can always resist and fight are the people of Tigray. So what do? Hey, we'll give you millions of dollars. We'll put together everything you need, weapons, including drones. Go and attack and kill them. And if you kill anyone 4 and up and wipe out the majority of the population, then they'll be done. There you have it. Then you get to run how you want it. That calculation was misunderstood. They don't understand. Tigrayans don't sell their soul for money. We don't betray our national integrity. We put Tigray first, no matter what. I know, I understand TPLF was not the perfect party, but let me tell you something. It is the people of Tigray that put to Ethiopia, that Ambassador Jeffrey Feltman was talking about, that it was the hub, the stability under the Tigray leadership when they form a coalition from TPLF to EPRDF. But there's a guy named Abiy Ahmed. At age 7, he thought he was going to become a king. Little did he know, he didn't understand about geopolitics in his own country. It used to be called Ethiopia.
Studies show that the average modern civil war now lasts 20 years. I repeat, 20 years. A multi-decade civil war in Ethiopia would be disastrous for its future and for its people. The first step, though, is demonstrating an openness to try. As I told a group of Ethiopian officials during a private retreat we hosted in June in Washington, the Ethiopian-U.S. relationship was then at a crossroads. I think the same is true for Ethiopia's broader relations with an important cross-section of the international community. We could proceed down one path that would inevitably lead to sanctions and other measures, or we go down another path on which we could revitalize the positive, promising bilateral relationship that was expanding to new heights when Prime Minister Abiy took office. The cornerstone of stability in the Horn of Africa, and that Ethiopian leadership that is so familiar to me from my UN tenure. Ending the war is the best path to a more stable, more prosperous country. And ending the war will also enable us to renew a more affirmative Ethiopian-U.S. bilateral relationship, a partnership that benefits both countries.
Except there will not be Ethiopia anymore. Let us be clear. What the U.S. doesn't understand is this war that was brought on Tigray is pure and evil and it's genocide. And you cannot continue to stand here and tell us that you're going to somehow magically, you're going to roll that special number 8 ball and make Ethiopia just that golden, peaceful, and your Playboy magazine looking Abiy Ahmed, somehow he's just gonna, we're gonna wash off the 900,000 plus that are level 5 famine condition you just described, the 80,000 plus refugees in Sudan, the hundreds of 2 million internally displaced in Tigray, 6.8 million in needs of humanitarian aid. All of these happen because there are two men who ordered this genocide and who caused such crisis in Tigray. Their names are Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia and Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea.
We urge Ethiopian leaders from all parties to take the steps necessary to arrest the current trajectory and permit its peoples and its partners to restore the promise that Prime Minister Abiy so compellingly outlined at the start of his premiership.
All right.
You booked a cozy Verbo mountain.
So, listen. I came to you this evening because what's happening, the advancement of TDF is making America extremely nervous all of a sudden that the truth on the ground in Tigray, the genocide committed on my people, is going to get revealed sooner than they thought. That the evil act by Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea and Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia is going to be known to the world very soon. And people in Europe and in America, when they see the horror that took place in Tigray, they're going to look at their leadership. They're going to look at our government. They're going to say, you knew this and you did nothing about it. You see, politicians are trying to be creative. U.S. is all of a sudden having an entire hour plus discussion about Ethiopia all of a sudden. What Ethiopia is just about 10 days, maybe perhaps 2 weeks away from a total collapse. The Ethiopian Defense Forces no longer are effective. Over 80% of the defense force, the federal Ethiopian Defense Forces, have been destroyed by TDF. Okay, let me be clear. Over 80% have been defeated, destroyed, killed, captured. What you now have is a bunch of young people have no idea where they're taken. They're told they're just gonna go help their brothers and sisters out there because junta is gone. These are 14 to 17-year-old young people rounded up throughout Addis Ababa and other part of the region and sent to the front line. And when they realized they couldn't fight, you all know what Isaias Afwerki say. He said, game over. You know what? That word game over, it's coming right back at them. Blessings to the young men and women of Tigray who are just continuously defending Tigray and the Tigray people. You see, we welcome peace-loving people, we, the Tigray people. Even after the horrors and even after the evil acts done on our people, we're not seeking revenge. We seek justice. When we say justice, we mean it. Those who have blood on their hand will not be able to wash it away because the blood of Tigrayans is not washable. Those peace-loving people who are supporting us, who are standing with us, we appreciate them. We respect them. We love them. So let me show you what Ethio 360 was saying earlier today, and then I'm going to now come in, add a little Tigrinya into the mix, because when they talk about it, I'm going to throw in some Tigrinya and some English, of course. But here it is. I'm going to let you take a listen to the Amharic, and then we'll go from there. Actually, I'm sorry. Okay, so let me fix my setting here. I apologize. Actually, there's a part where I'm trying to get at one of the gentlemen here. He's talking about abolishing Article 39. And it's important for us to hear why certain elite within Ethiopia are so nervous what's coming. Here we go.
Clear and present danger ስላለ ግልጽና ተጨባጭ አደጋ ስላለ መቅደም ያለባቸው ውሳኔዎች አሉ። የትላንትና ያቢ ንግግር ሰው እንደ ቀልድ ካየው you will see the consequence.
That's right, you will.
የህዋት መግባት አለመግባት አዲስ አበባ መያዝ አለመያዝ it's not issue.
Oh yeah, it is.
እሱ አይደለም አጀንዳ።
እሱ ነው።
ሶማሌ እንዴት ትገነጠላለች ነው አጀንዳው። አብይ ትላንት ያወራው ከገባችሁ
እንገባለን።
ኦሮሚያ እንዴት እንገነጥላታለን የሚል ነው ያወራው ለገባው ሰው። ስለዚህ መሆን ያለበት አስቸኳይ ጊዜ አዋጁ ባሻገር ያሉትን መወሰን ነው የሚሻል። ከሱ በላይ ያሉ ጉዳዮች ሁለት ነገሮች ማንሳት ፈልጋለሁ። ቢያንስ ሁለት ሶስት እንዳሉ መጀመሪያ የህዝቡን መነቃቃት ለመፍጠር ቅድም ሀብታሙ እንዳለው የህሊናና የፖለቲካ እስረኞች መፍታት ነው የመጀመሪያ። በሐሰተኛ ምስክር ያንገላታህ የሌባ ነፍሰ ገዳይ ምስክር አድርገህ የቀረብክ
I love it.
የትኛው የጥሩ ስርዓት ሊመጣ ነው? ስለዚህ በፖለቲካ እስረኞች መፈታት አለባቸው ሪጋርድለስ። ከዛ በማስከተል መራር ውሳኔ መሆን ያለበት እኔ ትላንትና መንግስት ለመስረት ሩጫ ሲካሄድ ትክክል አይደለም። መንግስት መመስረት ትርጉም የለውም። በመስከረም 24 እና በመስከረም 25 በጥቅምት 1 መካከል ልዩነት የለም።
አትዋሽ።
ለምንድን ነው የምትሯሯጡት መንግስት ለመመስረት?
አረተው
ምን ተገኘ? ጥሩ ነው ሀብታሙ ያነሳ
አላልክም። አትዋሽ።
ምን
I usually don't like to speak Amharic, guys, but I can't help it.
ይዛት ኢትዮጵያን ታደጋት ትላንትና ከነበረው ወረስት ነው እንጂ ሆነው መንግስት ከተመሰረተ በኋላ የተሻለ ነገር ሆነ። ከድጡ ወደ ማጡ አይደለም መሄድ ነው። ስለዚህ ክልላዊ መንግስት ለመመስረት የተካሄደው ሩጫ ክልላዊ መንግስት አሁን መሆን ያለበት መቀልበስ ነው ያለበት። በቃ መራር አገሪቷ ክሊር ኤንድ ፕሬዘንት ዴንጀር አጋጥሟታል፣ የህልውና አደጋ አጋጥሟታል ከተባለ የሁሉም ክልል ምክር ቤቶች መፍረስ አለባቸው። ያኔ ነው መራር ውሳኔ የሚሆነው። የሁሉም ክልል ምክር ቤቶች መብት አለው እኮ ይሄ አካል አሁን በአካባቢ አስተዳደር መዋቅር ማገድ መቀየር ምናምን ማፍረስ እኮ ይችላል። ለምን በአካባቢ መዋቅር ወረዳ ዞን ብቻ ይሆናል? ክልሉንም ነው ማፍረስ ያለው። ተሰጠው እኮ ስልጣን። ኢቭን አውቶሪቲ ነው ወይ? አውቶሪቲው አይደለም አውቃለሁ። ሄዶ የሰበታ አስተዳደር ከዛሬ ወዲያ ተፈርሳቸዋል ቢል እነ ሽመልስ አብዲሳ ይቀበላሉ አይቀበሉም? ሌላ ጥያቄ። ኦፍ ኮርስ ሰበታ አይሄዱም። የሚሄዱት ሰሜን ሸዋ፣ የሚሄዱት ባህር ዳር እንደሚሆን አውቃለሁ። ይገባኝ። ግን የክልል ምክር ቤቶቹን ማፍረስ እንደ ቅድመ ሁኔታ የሚመጣበት ምክንያት ሁለተኛውን ለማሳት ፈልጌ፣ ሁለተኛው ነጥብ የህገ መንግስቱ አንቀጽ 39 መታገድ አለበት።
So I promise to my Tigrinya listeners that I will jump in and bring in Tigrinya. So let me switch it, and I'm going to watch the chat. So for those of you who may not understand Tigrinya, please post your concern, comment rather, and I will come right back into English if you don't understand what I'm saying. But let me just say this. Ethio 360 is not a channel that I usually follow. Thank you to those of you who are sending me a link, and sometimes when you find something important, you share it with me. So this actually, I decided to bring it up today because I was talking to a friend, and I was told, hey, you got to check this out, what they're talking about. So I actually had the opportunity to listen to it, and sure enough, so I'm showing you just a chunk of portion of what they've been talking, but what I wanted to say in Tigrinya is this. ዓለም ሙሉእ ዘለኹም ደጋጊመ ስለ ዝበልክዎ አንተዎ ተጋሩ ኣብ ኣዲስ ኣበባ ሒዚ ኣብ ዳርጋ ጸልማት ኢዋን እዩ ዘሎ ምክንያቱ ናይ ምክልኻል ሓይልታት ትግራይ ቀሪቦም ስለ ዘለዎ ኣዲስ ኣበባ እቲ ኣብ ኣዲስ ኣበባ ዘሎ መንግስቲ ከም ልምዱ ምጭውርባር ሕሶት ስለ ዝኾነ ኣጭወርቢሩ ሓስዩ ኩልኹም ዕጠቑ ኩልኹም በቃ ከምዚ ናይ ፋና ዝገብርዎ ነበሩ ገዞም መሓዝ ካራ መሓዝ ንዝረኸብካዮ ትግራዋይ ትግርኛ ዝዛረብ ምጉዳእ እዩ ዘሎ ምእሳር እዩ ዘሎ ስለዚ ጥንቃቄ ንግበረኡ ሰሚዕኹም ኢኹም ግን እዚ ናይ ኢትዮ 360 ዝበሃል ሚድያ ሒዚ ናይ ኦሮሚያ ሓይሊ ናይ ትግራይ ሓይሊ ብሓደ ኮይኖም እቲ ግፍዒ ዝሰርሕ ዘሎ መንግስቲ ዘይኮነ መንግስቲ እየ ዝብል ዘሎ በኣዲስ ኣበባ ኣብ ቀረባ ግዜ ምውዳቆ ስለ ዝፈልጡ ዘለዉ እዮም ፈሪሖም ሂዚ ዓንቀጽ 39 ንተን ብሄረ ብሄር መብተን ክእገድ ከም ዘለዎ ክስረ ዘለዎ ዝብልና ዘለዎ ኢማጂን ትግራይ ደምያ ትግራይ ተጎዲኣ ካብ ባይታ ሓመድ ልሒሳ ተሲኣ ንጸላእታ ደምሲሳ መጨረሻ ግዜ ዓወት ሓፍሰሉ ኢዋን እቲ ተጻሒፉ ዘሎ ናይ ኢትዮጵያ ሕጊ መጽሓፍ ዓንቀጽ 39 ክስረ ዘለዎ ሂዝዮም ዝብሉ ዘለዉ ሕሰውሉ ክስረ ዘለዎ ንምንታይ ትግራይ ምስ ኣሸነፈት ጽባሕ ንግሆ ኦሮሚያ ምስ ትግራይ ኮይና መብታ ከይኽበር መብታ ከይሕሎ ብሕጊ ኢትዮጵያ ምክንያቱ ብወታደራዊ ሓይሊ ኣሸኒፍካ ሃገር ክኸውን የልካ በዓልካ ሃገር ክትከውን ኣይትኽእልን እዚኣቶም ነቂሕና በሃልቲ እዮም ኣይነቕሑን ንሕና እውንማ ኣይጠፈና ሚድያ ናይ ባዕልና ስለንሲና እውን ሳይበር ፓወር ትግራይ ሚድያ ሰብስክራይብ ገወርና ላይክ ገወርና ሼር ገወርና ንለኩም ዘለና ብኣኻትኩም ኢና ንዓቢ ብኣኻትኩም ረብሓና እቲ ብእንግሊዝኛ እቲ ብትግርኛ ኤፍሬም እውን ከም ትፈልጥዎ ብተምሓርኛ ቋንቋታት እውን ንሓወሰ ስለ ዘምፅእ ዘሎ ንሕና ግዜና ኢና ንህብ ዘለና ንመን ንኣኹም ንህዝብና ንሃገርና እቲ ዝሰርሕዎ ዘሎ ቦይንቶም ዝኩሉ ዓመታት ተቃለሱ ብፕሮፓጋንዳ ብሕሰት ንሕና ግን ብሓቂ ሓቂ ዘለዎ ንሓዝና ባይታ ንሕና TDF ፕሮፓጋንዳ መሽን ኣይኮና TDF ዝገብሮ ዘሎ ግን ሓቅነት ክንገልጽ ኢና እዚኦም ድማ ዝሕስብዎ ዘለዉ ነቲ ህዝቦም እቲ ኣምሓርኛ ሓደ ግዜ ኤፍሬም ዝገብሮ ዘለዉ ነቲ ሓስዮም ዘጭወርውርዎ ዘለዉ ናይ ኣምሓራ ህዝቢ ትግራይ ሓይልታት ምክልኻል ትግራይ ህዝቢ ምስ ኣምሓራ ህዝቢ ሽግር ከም ዘይብሉ ክቀትል ክሓርድ ዘይምዃኑ ክነእምኖም ክነርድኦም ኣለና ኣብቲ TDF ዘይኣተዉ ቦታታት ናይ ኤርትራ ህዝቢ እውን ከምኡ ሽግርና ምስ ህዝቢ ኤርትራ ኣይኮነን ሽግርና ምስ ተኾራኹር ናይ ሻዕብያ ናይ ሕግደፍ ናይ ኢሳያስ ኣፈወርቂ ምስኦም ይትፀገምና ንሶም እዮም ጽባሕ ንጎ ኣብኡ ግን ክርድአና ዘለዎ እንታይ እዩ ከምዚ ክብለኩም እንተለኹ እቲ ዕዳ ብትግራይ ዝመፅእ ዕዳ ሙሉእ ኤርትራዊ ዓለም ሙሉእ ዘሎ ክርድኦ ዘለዎ እዚ ዕዳ እዚዩ ብሕግደፋውያን ብኢሳያስ ኣብ ትግራይ ተሰርሐ ግፍዒ ክሳራ ናይ ኤርትራ ክሳራ እዩ ንሱ ግን ቀሲልና ጽባሕ ንጎ ክንማየጠሉ ንኽእል ኢና ንሶም ግን ጽባሕ ንጎ ብሕጊ ተሓተት እዮም እዚ ክንፈልጦ ኣለና እዚ ናይ ኢትዮ 360 ዝብል ግን ዝብልዎ ዘለዉ ዝገብርዎ ዘለዉ ዝገርም እዩ ብጣዕሚ ዘድንቕ እዩ ምሽናፎም ተፈሊጦም ሒዝስ እቲ ዘሎ ሕጊ እንድሕር ፈሪሱ እቲ ንግዝያዊ ተባሂሉ ዝምረፅ መንግስቲ ኢትዮጵያ ዘመሓዳድራ ንግዝኡ ትራንዚሽናል ገቨርንመንት ዝበሃል ክፍጠር እንከሎ ሕጊ የለን ማንም ዝኾነት ክልል ሃገር ናይ ኢትዮጵያ ትበሃል ትፅዋዕ ዘላ ሃገር ዝፈረሰት መብታ ብናይ ህዝባ ዝወሰኖ ድልየታ ከይትኸውን ክንዓፅዋ ምእንታ እዚ እዮም ዝብሉ ዘለው እዚ ዓይነት ፕሮፓጋንዳ እዮም ዘቕርቡ ዘለው ሒዝነት ህዝቦም
መታገድ አለበት አንቀጽ 30 ከባድ ነው ብዬ አላስብም ካጋጠመ ችግር አንፃር ከባድ ነው ብዬ አላስብም ህገ መንግስቱ ይኑር ኦኬ አንቀጽ 30 ግን ይታገድ ለምንድን ነው ይሄን የምለው እየጨረስኩኝ ነው አንቀጽ 39 በአስቸኳይ ጊዜ አዋጅ ተፈጻሚነት ይችላል ይፈጸማል መታገድ አይችልም የፈለገ አይነት አስቸኳይ ጊዜ አዋጅ ብታውጅ አንቀጽ 39ን ማገድ አትችልም ይሄን የተሰራው ሲስተም የተሰራው ስራ እሱ ነው ስለዚህ አንቀጽ 39ን የማገድ የክልል ምክር ቤቶችን በሙሉ ማፍረስ ክልል ምክር ቤት ማፍረስ ያልኩ ክልሎቹ ሄደው ከዚህ በኋላ ሀገር ሆነናል ብለው የሚያውጁበት ውሳኔ ሊመጣ ስለሚችል ሆም ብሎ ነው አብይ ትላንትና ሶማሌ ክልልን ኦሮሚያን ይጠራው ለምን አፋርን አልጠራም ለምን እንትንን አልጠራም ብለ መጠየቅ ይገባል ስለዚህ መራር ውሳኔ መወሰን ከሆነ እነዚህ ሶስት ውሳኔዎች ወሳኝ ናቸው ነምበር 1 የፖለቲካና የሊና እስረኞችን መፍታት ቁጥር 2 የክልል ምክር ቤቶችን ማፍረስ ቁጥር 3 ህገ መንግስቱና አንቀጽ 39ን ህገ መንግስቱ ላይ አንቀጽ 39ን ማገድ ስለዚህ ኢትዮጵያ አንድነትን ለመጠበቅ ከሆነ ማለት ነው የግዛት አንድነቷን ለመጠበቅ ከሆነ ማለት ነው ከዛ በኋላ ፕሮሰሶቹ መጀመር ቅድም የተባሉት ፕሮሰሶች መጀመር ይችላል ከዛ በዋናነት ግን የሰው ደህንነት የሰው ህልውና መጠበቅ መቻል የዜጎች የማይጣሱ ሰብአዊ መብቶች በዓለም አቀፍ ስምምነትም በተለያየ መልኩ ያሉ ስምምነት ውስጥ ያሉ የዜጎች የማይጣሱ መብቶች ከሰብአዊነት የሚመነጩ መብቶች የዲሞክራሲ ፖለቲካ ምናምን ይቅር እንደ ሰው የመታየትና የሰብአዊ መብቶች ግን በግልጽ መቀመጥ መቻል አለባቸው
አረባክተው
የቂም በቀል መወጣጫ የቂም በቀል የሀብት ማካበቻ ስላየነው ነው ከዚህ በፊት አይነ ደም መስሎ የከሌን ሀብት ላስወስድበት እኔ ልውረሰው በሚል የማይታመን አስፈጻሚ ፖሊስ በል ደህንነት በል ምን በል ሀብት ለማካበት የሚሯሯጥ ገንዘብ ለማሸሽ የሚሯሯጥ አንዳንዶች እኮ ወደ ኤርትራ እያሸሹ ነው ገንዘብ ወደ ኤርትራ እየወሰዱ ነው አንዳ ሌላ ሀገር ስለፈሩ ማለት ነው በተጨባጭ መረጃዎች ነው የምንነጋገረው ዛሬ ኤርትራ ደህንነቶች አዲስ አበባ ምንድነው ያደረጉ ያሉት የትኛው ገንዘብ ነው እየሸሸ ያለው ወዴት ነው እየሸሸ ያለው የሚለው ነገር በደንብ ማየት ያስፈልጋል ብዬ ነው ማስበውና በጥቅሉ ብሩ አማራ ክልል ላይ ሲፈጸም በሀገር ደረጃ ይኖር ብለናል ይኖር ስንል ግን እያንዳንዱ አንቀጽ ላይ ምንም ነገር ጻፉ ምንም አስቸኳይ ጊዜ አዋጅ ይኖር እያልን አይደለም እያልኩ አይደለም ይሄ ትክክል አይደለም አንዳንዶች ትላንት ብለ ዛሬ እንዴት ምናምን ሲሉ ስላየው ማለት ሶ
ብለሃል አሁን ግን አተዋሽ ዝም ብለህ እና ሰሚዕኹም ወይኹም ዝብሎ ዘሎ እኔ ወይ በሓፂሩ እዚኣቶም ዘይገብርዎ ዘይፍሕርዎ ጉድ የለን ጉደኛሃት እዮም ኣመሎም እዩ ከዓ ስለዚሁ ከምዚ ዓይነት ኣመል ዝሓዙ ሰባት ንሕና ክንጥንቅቕ ዘለና እዚኣ ሰሚዕና ዕላማና ከይንሰሓት መገደና ከይንሰሓት ቃልስና ክንቅፅል ኣለና ቁፅሮም ውሑዳት እዮም ኣበይ ከይመፁ እዮም እንታይ ከይገብሩ እዮም ሎም ዝንዓቕና ካብ 30 ንላዕሊ እምባስታት ዝዕፀና ዝኩሉ ሚልዮናት ጠጠው ዘበልና ስለተቃለስና እይተጋሩ ሓደ መስመር ሒዝና እዚኦም ከዓ ዝበሉ እንተበሉ ንሕና ናሃቶም ሸላልታ ዘይኮነ ክንብሎሲ ብደንብ ጌርና ክንቃለሰሉ ኣለና ተጋሩ እናተቃለስና ኢና ግን ክንብርትዐሉ ኣለና እዚኦም እዮም ርኢኹሞ ብኻርያ ዝመስሉ ሓለፍቲ ተባሂሎም መፅኦም ርኢኹሞ እዚ ናይ ትማሊ ዘሪእኹም ሓደ ቪድዮ ነይሩ እንዳጋጣሚ ኮይኑ ስለዚሁ እዚኦም ዝመስሉ ሰባት እዮም ጉድ ዝሰርሑ ዘለዉ ቶም ናሃቱ ኮራኮር ርኢኹሞ ትሪእዎም ኣለኹም እዚ እኳ ጉንበት 7 ኮይኑ ሒዙ ርኢኹሞ ገፅ ናይ ወዓግ ጥራይ ተሪፍዎ ዘሎ ኣብኡ ዝኒኣ መሳኪን እንታይን ዝገብረኻን ይገርመካ እዩ ርኢኹሞ እዚ እዩ ዘሎ እዚኦም ዝመስሉታ ዘለዉ ሞራሎም ተበጢሱ ሒዚ ዝኒሄ ጉድ ከመይ ጌርና ሂወትና ነውፅእ እዩ ኣብዪ ኣሕመድ ቤተሰቡ ውፅእዎም እዩ ሒዚ ንባዕሉ እውን ፅባሕ ንግሆ መውፅኢ ዝፍዕር ዘሎ መጨረሻ እንታይ እዩ ዝብለኩም እዚዩ ብናይ ኣሜሪካ ስቴት ዲፓርትመንት ኣዋጅ ዝተውሃበ እዩ እዚ ኣዋጅ እንድሕር ዘይሪኢኹም እሞ እንታይ እዩ ዝብል ዘሎ security alert እዩ ዝብል ኣብ ናይ ስቴት ዲፓርትመንት ዌብሳይት ኢትዮጵያ ኣብ ኤምባሲ ተለጠፈ እዩ ከንበልኩም እየ እንታይ እዩ ዝብል ዘሎ the security environment in Ethiopia has deteriorated significantly in the last several days with continued escalation of armed conflict and civil unrest in Amhara, Afar, and Tigray. A significant portion of the A2 highway connecting Addis Ababa with cities to the north has been restricted by federal authorities, which has led to disruptions, stranded travelers, and general non-permissible travel environment. U.S. Embassy personnel are currently restricted from traveling outside of Addis Ababa city limits, which strongly suggested that the U.S. citizens seriously consider travel to Ethiopia, and those who are currently in Ethiopia consider making preparation to leave the country. The U.S. government is made it official, okay, that American citizens in Ethiopia should prepare to leave Ethiopia. That means U.S. officially is agreeing that TDF is taking over Addis Ababa. I'm done with my notes. If you guys have family, friends in Addis Ababa, there are U.S. citizens. It's not a joke. Tell them get out. Have them fly back. Because you know what? Right before TDF captures it, they will dismantle what is left in Addis Ababa. So to make sure that there will not be internet, there will not be electricity, there will not be anything in Addis Ababa for communication, because that's what Abiy Ahmed is good at. He's good at one thing, destroying what was handed over to him successfully. Distraction is his real name. So I hope that what I brought you today, the majority of it, I try to cover it in English. I hope that you enjoy what I try to share with you. And for those of you who disagree with me, I respectfully don't mind what you have to say. I appreciate you are able to actually join us here on Cyber Power of Tigray. I appreciate the fact that you are willing to hear what we have to do to educate people like you who don't understand what's happening in Tigray. When we talk about genocide in Tigray, we're not making that up. It's evil act. Civilians in Tigray do not deserve death. It is unacceptable. It is sad. So if you are a son, a daughter, a father, a husband, and you have not spoken to your family for a year, you don't know who's alive and who's dead. Ask yourself, remove your shoes and put your shoes to the millions of Tigrayans, the pain and suffering they're going through. Then you might perhaps be able to understand why we are deeply troubled with what's been going on in Tigray. I do appreciate each and every one of you for joining us tonight, Cyber Power of Tigray Media. Since I'm traveling to Washington, D.C. tomorrow, every Wednesday, I bring you guys Hard Talk Cyber Power of Tigray in Tigrinya and English. Depending on scheduling, I will try to come back to you with my two analysts, Imna Arre and Barakat Kiros. Until then, you all have a lovely day, night, wherever you may be. Thank you so much. Love you guys. Tigray ta'awat, Tigray ta'sa'ir, nasa aratiya, nata awatatiya. Hayli Tigray, makalakhal haylita Tigray, nizal alam inwarna. Tigray ta'sa'ir, yaqni allay. Good night.